Chitra Soundar. I'm a Southwark resident and an author and a storyteller based in Southwark. And I go across the world with my books and my stories. I'm originally from India. I grew up in a coastal city called Chennai, which is in the southeast coast of India. And I went to school there, and I studied all my school, my university there before I came to the UK. When I was little, I used to tell a lot of stories growing up. And when I developed an interest in storytelling, my mother used to write plays and we used to go and act them out on stage. But I was also a bookworm. I read a lot of books. I love Southwark libraries, and even now I spend a lot of time in the library. I borrow loads of books all the time. Even now I borrow books through BorrowBox, which is the ebook and audiobook app. Welcome to Festival of Words with Southwark Libraries. I'm going to tell you stories from India. The stories that I'm going to tell you are originally folk tales from India, and these folk tales have moved across the country from region to region. And when I was little, I used to listen to these stories from my grandmother and my grandmother's sister, and also read them in comic books. And I really enjoyed them so much that I thought I would reimagine them in new setting with new characters, but still the same story. Long ago, in a faraway land, King Bhima ruled a small kingdom surrounded by the magnificent hills of Himduk. King Bhima was a just and a kind ruler. Every day he held court at the palace. Rich or poor, tall or short, man or woman, anyone could walk in with a problem. The king would always find a way to solve it. The king lived with his beautiful wife and son in a red stone palace. Prince Veera was 10 years old, but he didn't go to school. The school came to him. Almost like nowadays, isn't it? His teachers lived in the palace and taught him mathematics, science, economics, and many languages, including Persian, Mandarin, and Latin. The prince had to master archery, horse riding, and swimming. Sons of ministers and students with special scholarship came to the palace to study with him. If anyone could compete with Prince Veera, it was Suku, the farmer's son. Suku had won a scholarship to study with the prince. He was a good match for Veera and could tackle him in wrestling or fencing. He rode horses as well as Veera too. The two boys became good friends. They ate together, studied together, and played in the courtyard together. When they were let off early from classes, the boys liked to hide behind the golden curtains and peep into the king's court. It was always filled with people and their problems. 3 days after harvest, Suku came to the palace to see Prince Veera. He brought fresh corn, bunches of groundnuts, and tender coconut water to drink. "Do you want to go to the woods?" Prince Veera asked. "We can check mongoose holes for snakes and chase deer and bison." "After a week of harvest, I don't want to be anywhere near plants and trees," said Suku. "Can we sneak into the court and see what's going on?" "Father hasn't arrived yet," said Veera. "Let's hide before he comes." The boys scampered through the rooms, jumping onto ornate chests. The thick carpets hid the sound of their hurrying feet. Whenever a god appeared, they hid behind the large carved doors. As soon as they reached the queen's chambers, Veera peeked in to see if any of his mother's maids were there. Seeing no one, the boys went through the recreation room and into the viewing gallery. The long, thin corridor overlooked the court. Alongside the windows, a bench was set up for the queen to sit on and listen. The round windows were decorated with carvings of peacocks and elephants. They glistened, reflecting the sparkle of the gemstones. This is a great place to spy, said Prince Veera. You can watch everything that happens. Shh, said Suku. Spies don't chatter. Now what happens is they watch what's happening in the court and they think, we can solve these problems. Maybe we should have our own court. Really? Two boys? So the king allows them to have their own court and they quickly set up a courtyard court. You know what a laddu is? Laddu is a yellow colored, usually yellow colored, sometimes orangish, sweet, which is made of lentils and sugar and butter, and it's one of the most popular desserts that we make for our big festivals, weddings, and this story is about the laddus. State your case, said Prince Veera. With due respect, dear prince, I think this problem is too tricky for you, said the man. If I decide the problem is too big for me, the king will surely talk to you tomorrow, said the prince. Today you must place your trust in me. My name is Mita Ram. I have a small sweet shop in the market. I make all the sweets myself and I use only pure butter and sugar. This is the prince court. Don't waste our time talking about your sweet shop, said Suku. I really like sweets, said the prince. I want to hear more. Your Majesty, we make laddus, jalebis, and kheer, and son papadi. We make all sorts of sweets. We are famous all over the kingdom. Have you brought any sweets with you? Asked the prince. Mitaram turned and gestured to someone. Another man entered and handed Mitaram a large plate covered by a checked cloth. The smell of sugar and butter wafted all over the courtyard. People closed their eyes and enjoyed the smell. Very nice, said the prince. It smells very nice. He leaned forward to take a sweet. Suku shook his head ever so slightly. Veera sat back in his chair, frowning at Suku. Don't smell it, Your Majesty, said the other man. That's exactly the problem. Take the sweets to my room, said Veera. Your Majesty, this man Kapi stood several minutes outside my shop, smelling my sweets, but he left without buying or paying. What? If he didn't buy, why must he pay? Asked Veera. Because he enjoyed the smell so much. It takes a lot of butter and sugar to get that smell, Your Majesty. That smell attracts many customers into the shop. If they all came just to smell my sweets and never buy any, I wouldn't make any money. That's interesting, said the prince. This man Kapi should pay me 5 silver coins for enjoying the sweet smells in my shop. You have to be fair, Prince Veera, just like your father, said Mitaram. Prince Veera closed his eyes. He could almost touch the wafting fragrance of the sweets. It made him slightly hungry. Do you get hungry when you smell bread, fresh bread or cake? Kapi, what do you say for yourself? Kapi was not as richly dressed as Mitaram. He was thin, didn't wear any jewelry. His white shirt was almost brown and his dhoti was patched in many places. Dhoti is like a long cloth that you tie like a sarong. Usually men in India wear dhotis at home or even for formal clothes. Sometimes they wear clothes made of silk and mostly they wear out of cotton. My dear prince, I'm a poor man, Kapi began. I work very hard in the fields. Once a month, I come to town to buy groceries. I have only 5 silver coins. Walking through the market, I smell the sweets. I stop for a few minutes, taking in the wonderful smells, but the sweets were too expensive. I couldn't afford to buy rice, vegetables, and sweets with the money I had. What did you do then? Asked the prince. He didn't realize people had to choose between vegetables and sweets. He was surprised that Kapi decided to buy vegetables instead of sweets. I definitely choose the sweets, he thought. My children need food, Your Majesty. They go to school and they need to eat well. The sweets would last just for a day, but the rice and vegetables will last all month. So I decided not to buy the sweets. But you enjoyed the smell? The prince asked. Yes, I did. Somehow, the smell itself was enough. It was just like eating the sweets. That's exactly my case, Your Majesty, piped in Mitaram. Shoo! Suku hushed the man. The prince closed his eyes. He tried not to think about the sweets, but just the problem in front of him. What would father do? Okay, I've decided, said Prince Veera. Kapi, give your 5 silver coins to Mitaram. Kapi's face fell. With tears in his eyes, he handed over the money. Mitaram's face lit up with joy. He counted the 5 silver coins at least 5 times. The prince watched this in silence. Thank you, dear prince. You're very fair and just, said Mitaram. I'll take my leave now. Not so fast, my man. Now please return the 5 silver coins to Kapi. But he smelled your sweets, but he didn't eat them, did he? Yeah, but... And you held the money in your hands, didn't you? Yes, but... You counted it. You imagined it. Adding it to your money box. You enjoyed that, didn't you? Yes, but... He enjoyed the smell of sweets and you enjoyed the feel of money. A fair exchange, don't you think? Mitaram hung his head in shame. From now on, treat your customers fairly, Prince Veera cautioned. Always make some sweets for people who can't afford to buy expensive ones. Mitaram returned the money and left the court. Bring the plate of sweets from my room, said the prince. Take these to your children, Kapi. Let them eat rice, vegetables, and sweets today. Kapi left the court smiling and carrying a large basket filled with sweets. That night during dinner, Prince Veera ate all his vegetables, even his peas. So did you enjoy that story? Now, I thought I'll read you a story from A Jar of Pickles and a Pinch of Justice. So I'm going to read you a story about Prince Veera and Suku and grey elephants. Suku's aunt Chandra was a washerwoman. While she worked, she sang songs about the forest and the trees, the rivers and the bees. People in the village often stopped outside her house to listen. Like all washerwomen, she had a donkey. The donkey carried her load to and fro from the river and sang with her whenever it pleased. So when Chandra used to sing, the donkey would go, hee-haw! Can you do that? Hee-haw! But of course, the donkey's braying was not sweet like Chandra's voice. Like any other donkey, its braying was loud and harsh. One evening, Suku saw his Aunt Chandra in the market. Hello, Aunt Chandra, said Suku. How are you today? Same old, said Chandra. Every day I get into a fight with the porter next door. Why? asked Suku. The porter gets upset about everything I do. You beat your clothes too loudly, your donkey brays too loudly, your singing is horrible. But you sing beautifully, said Suku. That man must have no taste. Mark my words, my nephew, said Chandra. One day that potter is going to bring a bundle of trouble and drop it in front of my doorstep. I hope that doesn't happen, said Suku, but if it does, I'll be there to help you. One day, the potter was working on a vase for a rich man. It was a special order worth a lot of money. The potter had spent hours preparing the clay and setting it up on his potter's wheel. He didn't want anything to go wrong. The clay was poised on the wheel as it began to spin. Slowly the vase began to take shape in the potter's deft hands. Just when he was curving his fingers to shape the neck of the vase, he heard, "Hee-haw! Hee-haw!" The potter was so startled that he let go of the vase. Now it lay splattered on the ground in a big lump. He would have to start all over again. The potter was enraged at the donkey and the washerwoman who had allowed the donkey to sing. No one should encourage a donkey to sing, he mumbled. Enough is enough. I'm going to get rid of the woman and the donkey once and for all. That night he lay awake, plotting an evil plan. Early the next morning, the potter stood in the queue to meet King Bhima. "What can I do for you?" asked the king. "I have not come to ask for help, your majesty," said the potter. "I have come to help you." The king was astonished. How could the man possibly help him? Was he a spy? Was he a wise man with advice? Or an astrologer with a prediction for the forthcoming year? "Do tell me," said King Bhima. "I'm intrigued." "I'm a potter, your majesty," said the man. "I saw Airavata, the celestial elephant that belongs to Indra, the god of thunder, in my dreams." "I hear that's a good omen," said the king, still unsure why the man was in his court. "Yes, your majesty," said the potter, "but I wondered why that dream came to me." "That dream wasn't for me. I don't have any elephants." That's when I realized the gods were sending a message to you through me. "And what message would that be?" asked the king. "Even though your royal elephants are tall and strong," said the potter, "they are still as grey as the monsoon clouds." What? The king wasn't sure if the man was mad or genuinely trying to help. He decided to listen to him after all. "What should I do?" asked King Bhima. "I know someone who can wash your elephants and turn them as white as Airavata, the celestial elephant that belongs to god of thunder, Indra." "Really? Who is that?" "My neighbor, the washerwoman Chandra," said the potter. "She could turn even the greyest of clothes white. She'd be perfect for the job." The king was amused. Who was this miracle woman who could turn elephants from grey to white? Was the potter trying to get a job for his neighbor? Or was he up to something else? "Bring the washerwoman to my court tomorrow," ordered the king. When the news spread about the potter's dream and his suggestion to the king, everyone was afraid for Chandra. How could she change the color of the elephants? Soon the rumors reached Chandra too. She was worried. She had known the day would come when the potter would bring her harm. What was she going to do? Maybe Suku could help, she thought. Suku visited the king often and was friends with the prince. Maybe Suku could tell the king about the potter's ploy. Chandra went to Suku's house and explained the situation. "Tell me how to get out of this," she begged. "Don't worry, Aunt Chandra. I'll come up with something," said Suku. He didn't waste a moment. He set off to the palace to see Prince Veera. "I need your help, my friend," said Suku. He told Veera about the tiff between the potter and his aunt and how it had reached the palace. "I don't like this at all," said Veera. "It's one thing to have a disagreement with a neighbor. Pretty much everyone does." "Oh, we've seen so many cases of that," agreed Suku. "But to bring it to the king and make him party to the feud? Well, that's crossing the line," said Veera. "She's my aunt," said Suku. "I need you to help her." "I'm sure father will be fair," said Prince Veera. "We should teach the potter a lesson, though." Suku agreed. They couldn't just complain about the potter to the king. They needed a plan. "Can you show me how your aunt washes clothes?" said Veera. "Like everyone else," said Suku. "I'm a prince. I've never washed my own clothes, so show me." Suku took Veera back to his aunt's house. She had bundles of dirty clothing to wash. She said, "First, I soaked the clothes in a big pot like this. Then I beat them on a stone. After that, I washed them in the river and dried them on the riverbank." Veera watched with fascination. He should learn about all of this, he thought. Every time he put on clean clothes, now he would appreciate the work that went into washing them. "What if you had to wash a big blanket?" asked Veera. "I would need a bigger pot," said Chandra. "I'd get one from the market. The potter next door has a shop there." Veera smiled. "I think I know how to outwit the potter." "You must do what I tell you." Veera explained his plan to Suku and Chandra. That night Chandra slept peacefully. She knew the prince's idea would save her from the wrath of the king, and perhaps even stop the potter from bothering her again. Early the next morning, the king summoned the washerwoman to the court. Prince Veera and Suku were there too. "I order you to wash my elephants and turn them white, just like Airavata, the celestial elephant in the skies," said King Bhima. He was sure that the woman would refuse, because who could do such a task? The washerwoman didn't seem worried at all. She smiled at the king and said, "Of course, your majesty. May I see your elephants first?" The king was taken aback. "Perhaps I should invite the porter too to come with us to the stables," said Prince Veera. After all, it was his dream. The king agreed, and the porter was summoned. When he arrived, the porter joined the king and his entourage as they walked to the stables with Chandra, Veera and Suku. Chandra entered the stables. She walked around the first elephant. She took out a string and measured the elephant. She touched its back and trunk. Then she repeated the process with the second elephant. So she measured from top to bottom, from side to side. And remember, when you measure the tail, you have to be really careful, okay? Then she repeated the process with the second elephant. Then she nodded and did some calculations in her mind. The king watched with amusement as she considered the task. Suku and Veera were watching the porter. He looked far more afraid than the washerwoman. You know why? Because the washerwoman wasn't scared at all. So that made the porter quite nervous. Finally, after a few minutes of inspection, Chandra looked at the king solemnly and said, "I think I can wash these elephants and turn them white, your majesty." "What?" the king exclaimed. "But I need a few supplies before I can get to work." "What do you need?" asked Veera. "I need 2 pots to soak each of these elephants. The pots need to be big and strong because they need to be big enough for the elephants to roll over in their sleep. They need to be strong enough for the elephants to roll over in their sleep." The king caught on quickly. The king turned to the porter and said, "Dear man, your idea was very wonderful. I love the idea of having white elephants. How boring to have grey elephants. So, if you need to wash them, we do need those pots, and you are the porter. Please could you go home and make me 2 big pots? The pots need to be big enough for my elephant to sit down in and strong enough for them to roll over during sleep at night." The porter gasped. What? "Come with the pots," said the king, "as soon as you can." The porter ran from the stables back to his house. He packed his bags and left the village, lest the king should send soldiers asking for the pots. Chandra left the palace happy. She had managed to thwart the porter's ploy. "So tell me, boys," said the king, "did the washerwoman have any help?" Suku nodded and pointed at Veera. "She's my aunt, your majesty, and I'm grateful to Veera for helping me." "Well done," said the king. Do you like that story? That story is one of my favorite because my grandmother told me this a long time ago. And I always tell this story when I meet someone else. So, I've told you 2 stories. And your job is to find someone else in your family, whether it's your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, your fish, your dog, your teddy bear, doesn't matter who it is. I want you to go and tell them one of these stories. See whether you can swap the laddus for cake, or maybe for fish curry, or whatever you feel like, whatever smells really nice to you. Now, can you swap the elephants for something else? What would you swap for? What can you wash and change to white? Think about that as well. So you are, as old folk tales do, allowed to change the story a little bit and pass it on. And if you want to, you can write and draw this story yourself. And find me on my website, on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and ask your parents to share your drawings with me as well. So I'm wishing you all a safe stay at home and happy stories, happy summer, and I hope you enjoyed the stories.